Right? Should we
Yes,
start? Yeah,
sure.
okay. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to introduce Tima Anwana a third time to you. Tima is a research associate at the Department of Innovation and Digitalization in Law. I have the pleasure and the privilege to work with her now for, I don't know, almost 2 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken. She is a key member of the team, but she's not here primarily in this role today. She's here because she is from South African origin, and I hope that we get a little bit of insight about the situation as it looks like to people from South Africa at the moment, in particular when it comes to travel restrictions and other measures that are undertaken by European and other countries in the world. Tima, so great to have you here. Thank you again for coming. I put into the show notes 2 other Boni editions with you. You were the second one that we did long time ago in April 2020.
Yes.
So it's good to have you here, although the reason for having you back is serious. Could you perhaps give us an update how you think that South Africa is standing at the moment when it comes to the overall situation in the fight against COVID? And then more specifically about the variant that we see at the moment.
Okay, well, hi, Nicholas. Thanks again for having me. It's good to be back, although every time I come back, it seems like I'm not coming for good news. Yeah. But I think the situation in South Africa right now is quite sad because we are going into the festive period, and this is the time where people, love to be together and congregate. And prior to discovering this new variant, our numbers were quite low, and the daily infection rate was quite low, and vaccination was slowly picking up, but not doing as well as the government would have hoped. But I think it's quite a shock to everyone that this new variant has been discovered, and especially at the time in which it's been discovered. And I think a lot of South Africans are quite upset at the drastic measures that a lot of countries in the West have taken against South Africa and the Southern African region as a whole. So I think the general consensus in South Africa is that people are quite upset about the way the measures are, and people are not impressed with, the way the international community has handled the discovery of this new variant.
And being upset means that they are not content with what the government did or what the researchers did or what the general public in the world is doing. What exactly is the criticism?
I mean, I think when it comes to the researchers, South Africans, and I think perhaps the international community as a whole is quite happy with the fact that South African scientists and researchers have been doing such drastic work and have been practicing good science. And the fact that they've been so open and honest about finding this new variant and the possible implications of that. I think the criticism is more so for the fact that this new variant, the first specimen of this new variant was discovered on the 9th of November. And then the scientists, did some research, looked into it, and then reported this to the World Health Organization on the 24th. And almost 24 hours after the report was made, the UK instituted the travel ban and put South Africa on the red list, as well as other Southern African countries on the red list. And I think that's more so the criticism from members in South Africa and on the continent as a whole, is that there wasn't really an opportunity given for the World Health Organization to convene, for its technical advisory committee to convene, for the international community to look at the data and come up with, discussions about how to handle things. South Africa wasn't put on the amber list first and then moved to the red list when more information was available. I think the upset, at least from what I'm understanding from social media and from interviews with ministries of tourism and so on, is that people are upset with the drastic measures that were taken even before further information was available to justify the measures.
Yeah. I think the president even names this as being a punishment to South Africa, right? According to BBC Today.
Yes, so he said it was a punishment to South Africa, that it went against informed science, that the decisions were not being made based on science, but rather on fear. And he also alluded to the fact that at the G20 summit meetings last month in Rome, that there was some sort of understanding amongst the countries that there would be more support for African countries, and there would be more kind of camaraderie when it came to figuring these things out. So he kind of feels blindsided by this. And it feels like South Africa is being punished for being honest and being forthright about the current situation.
And does it have any impact on the vaccination rate in South Africa at the moment, or to the approach on how people think about vaccinations in South Africa and worldwide?
I mean, I'm hoping it does, because our vaccination rate is quite low. So at this point, only approximately 35% of our 60 million people in South Africa are vaccinated. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that our population is quite young. So 65% of the South African population is between the ages of 15 to 34, around there. So we have a very young population, and I think a lot of young people don't feel perhaps that this coronavirus pandemic is really affecting them. They don't feel like they are the target audience for getting sick or, falling prey to the virus. So I think perhaps this new variant that has been found will encourage people to get vaccinated and to understand that that's a way that they can protect themselves. But then again, the biggest concern with this new variant is if it's going to be resistant to the vaccines that we have all currently taken. So that's something that also is yet to be determined, and the World Health Organization hasn't given an indication on if they know yet. And they say they need a few more weeks to run further studies before they're able to decide. But I'm hoping more people will get vaccinated back home.
Because one part of the debate here in Europe at the moment is that people argue that Europe, have argued already and still argue that Europe will not be safe as long as there are huge areas in the world where significant amounts of the population are not vaccinated, be it because of shortage of vaccines, be it because of reasonings like the one that you were mentioning here. And this is a very good example in a way, right? Because we are here in Europe, we think about booster shots and third and so on shots. And at the same time, we have huge amounts of people who didn't get a single shot yet, right? But if I understand the situation correctly in South Africa, there is at least no shortage of vaccines at the moment. So if you want to be vaccinated, you can get it, correct?
Yes. So, at the beginning, we definitely had a shortage of vaccines, but right now that's not the issue. Even the government has had to kind of halt future vaccines coming in because we have such a large stockpile of vaccines and people are not being vaccinated. So the problem that we have now is an increase in vaccine hesitancy, because at first we saw a lot of people wanting to get vaccinated, and now that kind of has died down. That's largely being attributed to the fact that the numbers have been so low, so perhaps people don't feel like it's that much of a problem anymore. Other reasons could be, like, again, I said, our very young population not feeling like, they are at risk. And also there's large levels of distrust amongst people with the government. So there's a lot of distrust about corruption and different issues that the ANC government has had in recent history. And I think that has also played a role in people not really trusting the government, or not believing what the government has to say. And also just young people not really feeling like that they're bothered or that they would be really impacted if they get vaccinated or not.
So at least one can say that the news on this variant don't have a positive impact at the moment on vaccination rates. So people don't run to get their shot at the moment.
I haven't really seen that from what I'm looking at. I haven't seen like a huge increase in the numbers that I was looking at. I'm hoping that will happen, but on social media, there is a bigger push. People saying, guys, let's get vaccinated. This wouldn't happen if, more people were vaccinated. And a lot of doctors have come forward and have said that a lot of the cases, a lot of people who are coming into the hospitals and who possibly have contracted or have this new variant are people in their 20s and their 30s. And a huge population of those people are not vaccinated or have only been vaccinated once. So in that instance, you can see that there's, within the social community and within people on social media, doctors, there's a lot of encouragement, especially targeted at young people, for young people to go out and get vaccinated. Yeah.
And if you needed to describe the feeling of the general public, I understand you in the way that at the moment it's primarily anger. So people are upset about that South Africa is punished. Is there also fear?
I wouldn't say so. From my indication, what I'm seeing on social media, people are still out and about. The government has not imposed any kind of stricter measures beyond what were in place already. So of course we have the social distancing measures, and we have rules on how many number of people can be at certain gatherings and things like that. But aside from that, I haven't really seen people slowing down their daily activities. I think more so what people are upset about is firstly, people who are refusing to be vaccinated. And secondly, people are upset about the way they feel that Africa is being treated by the Western world. And there's a general consensus that if this variant had been found anywhere else in the world, there would have been less of a rush to impose bans and so on. And there might have been a little bit more patience given for more facts to be put in place before any drastic measures were taken.
And is there any debate why it can be that South Africa is now already the second time identifying a variant? I mean, is this seen as a coincidence, or is this seen as the outcome of transparency or a well-working scientific environment? Or
yeah, I think people are looking at this more positively than negatively. I think people are definitely saying, South African scientists are doing good work and are being quite honest and transparent about their work. I saw an interview yesterday from a representative of the World Health Organization where she was basically commending South Africa on always being honest and forthright about its findings, and on its scientists being very communicative with the World Health Organization, being willing to meet with them and talk to them and hold advisory talks and things like that. So I think people are more so impressed, at least internally, with our scientists and the fact that, an African country is able to produce such good work and is able to identify variants so quickly. So on the one hand, I think people are rather impressed with us, but on the other hand, I think a lot of people feel that at some point we might have to be less honest and perhaps be more cautious on how quickly we share information, because as you can see, it creates this huge fear amongst other parts of the world. And I think a lot of decisions are being made based on fear as opposed to based on waiting to see what the facts actually are. Yeah.
Which might have a negative impact on any other country identifying variants from now on, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think other countries might be a little bit reluctant to report new variants that they might find, or they might take more time to internally do more research themselves and then only report it once they have all the facts, as opposed to being quite upfront within a couple of weeks and letting the World Health Organization know what is really going on. Yeah, so that's the fear. I think it would be terrible if countries are more secretive about variants or numbers or things like that. I think it would be detrimental to all of us.
We have a very similar but much smaller phenomenon here in Austria, because it's constantly the case that everything which is imported freshly into the country pops up in Tyrol first, which is one of the 9 regions. And on the one hand, people start blaming Tyrol for always causing the trouble. On the other hand, one of the reasons why this might happen might be that they do relatively good screening there in comparison with other areas of the country. And it might be that it's not that Tyrol is per se a problem, but it's more about you find it quickly there, right? And if that were true, it's also, I mean, it's quite the same tendency, right? There might be people arguing, just don't look that closely. If you
exactly, turn a blind eye.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also really sad because it affects the entire Southern African region, right? So now we see countries like Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, all these other countries in the surrounding areas of South Africa, who maybe at that stage had not even really reported any cases of the new variant, but they were also included in the travel ban, purely because of proximity. And I think that makes it difficult for, these other smaller countries. South Africa is quite a dominant country in the SADC region. I think it makes it difficult for smaller countries because they are constantly affected by whatever happens in South Africa. So their tourism is going to be affected by that. Their ability to recover from this pandemic is always affected by things that happen in South Africa, which is quite sad.
And is there any way of international organization of those countries trying to speak with one voice, or is there some unification when it comes to trade policy, tourism, etc., happening because of this at the moment?
Yeah, so all the Southern African countries are part of a regional body called SADC, And that regional body has a lot of organized trade decisions with each other and tourism and things like that, and free movements within the SADC region. But what we see is that SADC countries are coming together and are really saying that they stand with South Africa on this, and that they, are impressed by the work that South Africa is doing, because it also assists them in their detection of variants. And they've also come out to say that they're opposed to the travel restrictions that are being imposed by the international community, and that they would rather prefer if there was more of a collaborative approach and more communication and decisions being made kind of together, as opposed to unilateral decisions being made in the West that negatively impact a whole region. Yeah.
And are you aware of any reactions from the Western countries on this? I mean, is there any reply available?
I mean, I've seen some interviews, specifically from the UK. So with leaders in the UK health industry. And essentially, they have basically said, that their quick reaction for this is not because it's Africa. It's not from a discriminatory point of view, but it's solely because they see this new variant as being distinct from other variants, such as the Delta variant. That in those cases, what they were concerned about was the rapid transmission. Whereas in this case, what their concern is that this variant, because of its unique mutations and things like that, is going to be resistant to the vaccine. So the way they see it is they're basically said, look, South Africa, we're dealing with very high numbers over here in Europe. It's winter time. It's difficult for us to maintain what we already have, the issues that we're dealing with now, and we don't want to introduce a new variant into our community at a time where we're just, holding on, where we're just trying to figure things out with the numbers going really high in Europe and so on. So that's really been the response that I've seen from the most part from the UK. They're basically saying that it's not a discriminatory thing, but I think being African and coming from Africa, you will definitely see it a different way, because we do often feel like when issues are identified in Africa, the rest of the world treats it as a little bit worse, or, they take more drastic measures than they would if it was originating from another Western country, for example.
It's also striking in my view that, I mean, as far as we know at the moment, there are plenty of cases already here in Europe. So, I mean, including Austria, as I said before, right? So I don't know. I'm not aware of any additional quarantine measures at the moment for those people coming with this variant, right? So
yes, and that's another thing that people are pointing out, that this variant, this morning I read 13 confirmed cases in the Netherlands. 3 cases in the UK, 3 cases in Germany, a few cases in Italy and Belgium. Hong Kong has reported some cases in Israel as well. And we don't see any travel bans being imposed on Hong Kong and Israel, right? So I think that's another thing that makes Africans feel like this is something that's being targeted against us. And we take it personally. We take it personally that, something originates in Africa and it causes this huge reaction from the international community, whereas all of that happened before the World Health Organization was even able to convene. All of these bans were imposed before the variant was even given a colloquial name, before it was even categorized in the World Health Organization's classification of how they deal with the variants. So I think it's just kind of this timeline of events and the way things went on that has led people to feel that this was something that was kind of targeted or personal against Africa.
Thank you, Tima. I think that was an excellent overview about how things happen at the moment and how they look like in South Africa. And I very much appreciate your input. Is there anything you want to add from your point of view that I didn't ask you for?
I don't think so. I think it's just important to say that it would be great if we could be more collaborative as an international community. We're all dealing with this virus, you know what I mean? It's not something that's unique to one country. We're all dealing with it. And I think more collaboration amongst different regions or different countries would be helpful, as opposed to, imposing bans that really affect on one country's economy. I understand that countries have to prioritize themselves and their population, but I think a little bit more concerned to how we all collaborate as an international community, how we make things better for all of us, and finding solutions that don't hurt one continent, especially a continent that's really struggling to hold on. I think that would be something that I would, if anybody with any influence watches this, is something that I would like to encourage, is better collaboration and more communication, as opposed to just drastic knee-jerk measures in the future.
Thank you so much for this, Tima. And all the best to you, all the best to your friends and family, and all the best to you listening to us. Stay with us, stay connected, stay as healthy as you can. All the best, and see you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Bye.